Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome, welcome, welcome. It is Tuesday. It is 4 p.m. ET, and we are so thrilled that you have found us here on Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. I'm your host, Hank Phillippi Ryan, the USA Today best-selling author of 16, going on 17 novels of suspense. My current book is One Wrong Word, which you see on the door behind me. But I can tell you, breaking news, that poster will soon be replaced by a poster with the cover of my brand new book, which is called All This Could Be Yours, about a debut author on book tour with a surprise best-selling author who discovers there's someone out to ruin her career and destroy the family she's left back home. And her book tour becomes a cross-country cat and mouse chase with the author running for her life, just like real life, just like a real life book tour, and that comes out on September the 9th. But we are here today to talk about this fantastic book, which is out today, Her Many Faces by Nicci Cloke. You all, this is such a clever, ingenious, thought-provoking book. A terrific mystery at the core, but around it, it is wrapped in this gorgeous tour de force of point of view. I have never read a book like this. It is utterly unique and riveting and propulsive, and I cannot wait for Nicci to talk to you about it today, and also to welcome her from Cambridgeshire, England, where this is the pub day for Her Many Faces in the US. Congratulations, Nicci. This is your first US book. You've written 8 books, but this is your first US book. What's that like?
It's so special to me. It's been like a career goal for a long time, and it feels really exciting. And yeah, it's just so amazing to me that my book has been published there.
I mean, it is this whole new audience for you. I know a lot of people who are now clamoring to get your other books, which are published in the UK. But here's Sherry, and here's Robin, and here's Susie Baldwin, and Katie Crutchfield, and Kathy Lanigan. And Randy is here, who says, I just bought Her Many Faces from an indie bookshop on Abe Books. I'm
Yay.
so excited for this event. Yes, and you should all run, click, 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 and get your copy of Her Many Faces. Let me tell you, hey, Tori T from Indiana, and Emily is here as well. Do not go right now to buy this book, not right now, because one of you will win a copy of this book as we spin the wheel of fun at the end of the show. But after that, if you're not the winner, you know what to do. Run, click, 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 and get Her Many Faces on its fabulous US Pub Day. That is marvelous. Let me tell you a little bit about our author. Nicci Cloke is the author of 8 novels, and her newest is Her Many Faces, a psychological suspense novel that tells the story of a woman on trial for murder through the eyes of the 5 men who think they know her best. She lives in England and has worked as a nanny, a Christmas elf, and a cocktail waitress, among other things, to support her writing, the latter of which proved useful research for this book. And this book indeed is Her Many Faces. You just heard that was my pencil sharpener falling on the floor. Her Many Faces, which is out today in the US. Nicci, welcome.
Thank you.
And I always love to hear how authors describe their books. Will you describe your book for us?
Of course. So Her Many Faces is the story of Katie, who is on trial for poisoning 4 very powerful, influential members of the private club where she works. But it's told, as you said, through the perspectives of the 5 men who are kind of the most important men in her life. Her dad, her childhood best friend, her ex, her lawyer, and a journalist who's writing about the case. And they all have a very different idea about who she is and whether or not she could have committed the crime.
I want you to tell us more about this structure of the story in a minute, because it is absolutely unique and absolutely riveting. If you are just joining us, we are talking to Nicci Cloke about Her Many Faces. Betty Fellow says, I bought the book after the back room. Yes, indeed, Nicci.
Thank you, Betty.
Yes, yay, Betty, right? That's fantastic. I want to talk more about that in a minute. But this is such a puzzle of a book, and you had to put together those puzzle pieces so gorgeously and have them all snap into place like a Rubik's Cube. But what were the first, just to mix a metaphor here, what were the dominoes that fell that brought this story to the top of your mind?
A few different ones. I think the main one I had started thinking, and I'm going back God, maybe 5 years now, when I just finished book 7, and I had this huge crisis of confidence and started and abandoned 12 different books, and was trying to, like, really casting around thinking, what do I want to do with my career? Like, what kind of book do I want to write? Nothing feels like the right story. And I had started thinking about nicknames, weirdly, or names that people in my life have called me, and how those names feel like kind of selves that I might have left in the past, or don't feel like quite me anymore. But maybe, I guess, are the version of me that that person saw at that time. And I decided I wanted to tell a story of a character in that way. So the different roles that she plays for people in her life. And that was like very complex, trying to work out which men who I would use to tell that story. So her dad, my dad, when I was a kid, used to call me Tricky, which I think it's just because it rhymed, but it also became quite ironic because I am the biggest people pleaser in the family, like the one who's always trying to make everybody happy. And it became a bit of a joke. And in the same way, Katie in the book, her dad calls her Kit Kat. She's the littlest, the youngest in the family. She's like his angel, his perfect child. And I really thought it'd be interesting to contrast that to the version of her we meet through other characters' eyes. And then there was another quite key domino during lockdown, or just after lockdown, actually, where I had a man come to fix a treadmill that I'd bought as an ill-advised COVID purchase. I'd bought a treadmill to use at home, and I had a man come to fix it because it broke during lockdown, because I guess I was using it too much, or it was a cheap treadmill. And he was this repairman who'd been recommended to me, and he was a really nice guy. We were just chatting as he was trying to fix it. And then in the middle of a completely normal conversation, he turned around to me and said, "Oh, well, you know, there's 3 men who run the world." And I said, "Are there?" Just a bit like confused. And he said, yeah. They faked 9/11, and that's how it all started. And then proceeded to tell me that these 3 men had also faked COVID and the war in Ukraine, and just all of these, like, it was a very elaborate conspiracy theory that he was so convinced by that he was actually quite angry. He became very angry with me. And once he'd left and I was feeling safe again, I started to realize that this was happening more and more. We had a family friend who had told me not long after that Joe Biden was a man in a mask. And I was seeing friends from school posting conspiracy theories. And it was interesting to me that was becoming more mainstream, and that I was seeing that more in my life, people subscribing to these kind of alternative worldviews. And I didn't want to write a whole book about it. And it's not really what Her Many Faces is about. But the crime that Katie is accused of is connected to a conspiracy theory. And so I wanted to weave that in. And I think that was the missing ingredient I had when I was trying to think about her story, was who are these men and why have they been killed? And it was interesting to me to add that element.
Yes. And I think, though, that's so wise and so smart, and must have been so scary when the treadmill repair person came, because, you know, if he's going to say things like that, what else is he thinking or doing? But you got rid of him. That's great. But
Yes.
the sort of broader truth that you also learned from that, it feels like to me, is that belief is such a strong thing. And our strong beliefs, what we actually believe is true, colors how we see the world. And that's what you've done for each of these 4 points of view in the book. The men in the book who know, who think they know Kate, that becomes their truth about her.
Yeah.
Can you talk about, is that right? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. And I find that really interesting, because so often, and I kind of learned this a lot as I was writing them and discovering, you know, getting to know them through the drafts, that so much of what they think and say about her is nothing to do with her. It's to do with them. It's them projecting their own reasons. Her ex thinks very negatively about her, but that's because he's not willing to see how badly he behaved. He's much older than she is. There's a big conflict of power between them. And rather than look inside himself and see how badly he behaved to a much younger girl, he'd much rather see her as this kind of bunny boiler, like unpredictable, dangerous person who admittedly is now on trial for murder, so could be dangerous. But so that was interesting to me to, at the same time, figure out what I wanted them to tell us about Katie, because that is, on the surface of it, the purpose of their narratives. But at the same time, what are they telling us about themselves and their history and their connection to her and what they need from her?
I think what they need from her is such a wonderful point as well. One of the points of view is a reporter, and he's using her, quote quote, to build his career. That he says this is the best thing that's ever happened to him, this murder trial.
Yeah, and as well as that, so he is very ambitious, but also he's had a negative experience in the past where he's been doxxed by a conspiracy theory website because he was writing articles about the pandemic and lockdown, and he has had death threats for doing that. And so he brings with him this bias about her because the murder is possibly connected to a conspiracy theory. Automatically, he needs to believe that if she has done it, she's not sane, she's not a reasonable, rational person, because that's his experience, and he is unable to look past that bias and see the truth about her when she's in court. He's very blinkered by it.
And these kinds of descriptions of her are what's the structure of the whole book, Her Many Faces by Nicci Cloke. We're talking about a woman on trial for murder and how she is described by the quote, quote, men in her life. Another one of the men is the barrister, the lawyer, who is called on to represent her. What does she mean to him?
He's probably my favorite, actually. I guess technically he should have the most kind of neutral approach to her. It's his job not to have an opinion on her. He's meant to just represent her the best he can in court with the facts that he has, and try and not let his personal judgment, cloud that. But he has just come back to work after having suffered a nervous breakdown, because of a previous murder case he worked on where he managed to get the defendant off and then later found out that she had in fact committed the crime. And so he brings with him, he's kind of haunted by that case, that he did the wrong thing. He was responsible for someone walking free and justice not being done. So he, of all of them, finds it the hardest to look at her and not judge and not try and put this image on her. And she also, because she is on trial, she's scared, and she isn't very good with authority. You see that throughout her backstory. She's not particularly good at respecting authority, and she finds being in police custody and in the very sterile, formal environment of a court quite difficult. And so she's not putting her best face forward for him. She is prickly and difficult, and yet he is the one who I think gives her the biggest chance. As much as he's nervous of getting to know her and letting her in, he's got the biggest heart, I would say, of the characters, even though he's quite cold at the start. So he's my favorite.
You really let us in on each of these characters' psychologies, and I want to talk about that in a minute. But what Katie is thinking in the book is that, and feeling in the book, is that she is being judged every minute of the day by every single person who she comes in contact with, and people she's known in the past and people she doesn't even know. And this idea of turning the prism to be the person who everyone is looking at and judging has got to be supremely high pressure and terrifying.
Yeah, and they are literally telling her, aren't they, in the book? They are addressing her. All of their chapters they're telling her, you did this, you were this. And I think that has often been my experience as a woman, is that the world just wants to tell me what I am or what I think or what I feel at all different stages in my life, what I should want, what I'm trying to achieve. And it was quite cathartic, I think, to put that on the page.
Exactly. I mean, the tone of it is almost accusatory. You've written it in this gorgeous voice. For instance, each each point of view has what they call her. Here's the reporter calling her Killer Kate, and it brands her at the beginning of each chapter, and then they describe to her or us what role she plays in their life and what they need from her and wish for her and want from her. There's a lot of talk these days about the male gaze.
Yeah.
And what that is. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that plays into this? It's a murder mystery, you all, but how
it is first and foremost a murder mystery. And the male gaze, I think traditionally when we talk about the male gaze, we usually mean sexualizing women. And one character in the book does do that to her. Conrad, the ex, is very much about the way she looks and the way she behaves, and it's very about desire. But for me, although the characters are all men, and I'm very interested in that relationship between them, and it certainly, when I thought back to nicknames that I had in the past, they did tend to be from male friends or boyfriends or family members more so than women. But I actually think the book is at its heart about the roles we all play for everybody in our lives and the things we project onto everyone in our lives. It's not necessarily a male-female thing. That's just an interesting dimension that came later. And I am interested in, the many faces, I guess, we wear at all times, whether we mean to or not.
Which means the title is absolutely perfect, and obviously it is. I'd love to ask you, though, and we were just talking about this, at the core of this book is a solid, fair murder mystery. And there are conventions that have to happen in a murder mystery, that there has to be a victim or more, there has to be a suspect or more, there has to be some sort of investigation that's going on. And in the end, in a mystery, there has to be some sort of justice. Though the tenets of writing a mystery, how top of mind were those to you when you were writing this? And did you have the mystery first, or did you have the idea for the structure first?
Definitely the structure first. And I think the structure, although everyone keeps saying to me it must have been really hard to write, and it was in its way, it actually is quite helpful for a murder mystery because you have all these different people who can give you different clues. And you have several people who are investigating in their own way. Obviously, the journalist is trying to uncover it in one way. The lawyer, though it's not his job to investigate because he has this lack of trust based on his previous experience, he is sort of investigating and trying to check things out for himself. And her dad, too, in his own way, is searching for answers. So it kind of spreads the work for you, not instead of having one character who's doing all of that investigating and looking for clues, they all are doing it. So it actually worked quite well. And obviously you have more opportunities to kind of sneak in that backstory that's crucial without having to drop it,
No, that's one reason this book is so clever, because the history, the background, the backstory doesn't feel like that. It feels like part of just an actual discussion about how someone feels about someone. And how a character feels is so much an engine of a novel. And you go into such depth on each of these characters in this book. We're talking about Her Many Faces by Nicci Cloke, just out today. This is Pub Day in the US. How did you get so incredibly deeply into the psyche of each of these characters?
That's my favorite thing to do, I think. I don't know about you, but when I'm writing a novel, that's my favorite thing, is to really figure out who they are. And I guess it's not something you can really rush. Like it's a process. I love wasting time on the internet with like a character questionnaire, like answering questions about the characters. But I do find that writing scenes that probably aren't going to make it in is one way that I find out like how they relate to each other, particularly in this book, how they relate to Katie. Starting to write those scenes between them and to figure out how they'd met or like what they would have talked about helped. But I think my most useful thing that I've ever done for my writing was I once went on a course that was run by a psychotherapist.
Huh?
And she ran a course called Getting into Character, and it was a week long. We were all authors who brought one character with us to spend the whole week learning about psychotherapy, learning about different principles and different models and theories, and applying each of them to our characters to figure out how their families and life experiences would influence the way they, see the world and interact with it. And this is a couple of years ago, but I still go back to the material that I got from that course, and and yeah, use
Well,
it.
because I mean that's fascinating. And again, we're talking about Her Many Faces by Nicci Cloke, just out today. A fantastic murder mystery. Do not miss this novel, written in a gorgeous multiple points of view that take you deeply into the book. But I guess what you're doing in delving into a fictional character's psyche is that you're making them be a real person, right? And as a result of that, what they do makes sense because we can understand why they do it, and that doesn't all have to be on the page. But so you wrote, Renee says that sounds like an incredible course, Nicci.
It
Absolutely.
was. She doesn't run it anymore. I would go on it again if she did, but
Well, so did you keep a diary or do bios, or how did you do that? I mean, it's, some writers think I'm not writing any more that's in this than it's in this book. I write my words of the day, but you did more than that.
yeah, I did. And I kind of kept like a running document for all 5 of the men where it started mostly as a list where at the very basic level, it was, what does each of these characters think about Katie? And it could just be a few words. And like, say for the ex, it was, she's manipulative, she's unpredictable. And then I kind of worked back and thought, what's happened between them to make him feel like that? But what has happened in his life before that to make him kind of predisposed to feel that way about her? And then I started figuring out their bios from there, and then also try to figure out their voice. So start writing some stuff in first person to try and get their voice, because I think when you've got 5 narrators, it's really important that they sound different, and that, the reader isn't having to flick back to check who's speaking each time. They need to sound like individual. So I spent a lot of time trying to make sure that was happening.
There was not a moment in this book where I did not know exactly who was talking or exactly what was happening. And as an author, I mean, as a reader, of course, I appreciate that because it makes the book feel seamless and propulsive, and I can't wait to turn the page. But as an author, there's a different way of reading the book that I'm a little bit looking down on it and deconstructing how you did it. And I was in awe of that because what the characters said and did felt very natural to me. So I wonder if, and I'll go on to another subject in a second, and I want you all to come up with questions too. I see Deborah Press and Robin Stull and Christopher Hinterberger is here. That's so great. Welcome, Christopher, and Vicki Gregory and Melanie. So many people here today. I wonder about the author's imagination, as a person who was 2 words on the page becomes a fully formed character, human being. What do you think about that? And how does that feel to you?
I mean, I think it's one of those things that when you look back at it, you forget how much work it took. So I'm just getting to the end of the first draft of the next book and feeling so frustrated because I think these characters don't feel real to me yet. And of course they don't. I've only been with them for a couple of months, whereas the men in Her Many Faces and Katie herself, I spent, a couple of years with. And I think it is just that process of redrafting. And every time I redrafted, I would take each man's chapters and work on them all at once. So that I could spend time in that character's voice and get it and make sure I was totally in their head. And then when I was done with each of the 5, I would then slot it all back together and then work through the draft again, which was a nightmare.
I was going to say, technically, I was trying to figure out. So you wrote it the first time all in a row.
Yeah. I was piecing together who would tell us what and when and her backstory. And then when it came to edit it, I printed it off and I separated the chapters into piles. Like, these are all John, the dad's chapters. These are all Max's, the journalist chapters. And I'm going to edit each one of those separately. And then when the time came to put them back together, to try and remember where the chapters go, just a big jigsaw puzzle. I work best, much as I love technology, I work best with physical manuscripts. So they were pages spread across the floor. That's how I can visualize a story best.
Sue Street says an interesting writing process sounds tiring. To me, it seems like potentially magical too, and kind of invigorating and inspirational when it starts to work. Was there a moment when you thought, "Ooh, this is going to work"?
Yeah, there was. And I actually really clearly remember, because I was in this huge, dark night of the soul place in my career. And I remember writing one of the chapters where Taran, the lawyer, is talking about first hearing about Katie, and her case has just landed on his desk, and he's reading about her arrest, and I could just visualize him very clearly, and I could visualize her in her waiting in the prison cell, and I just thought, this feels different to the other stuff that I've haven't been ready to write. This feels like this is the book for me right now.
As a writer who you were saying that you had felt this sort of dark night of the soul, and that can be a moment where an author's brain can really just seize up and stop you. And it is very difficult to go on. What was it that gave you the courage to just keep trying? Is that something you can articulate at all? I mean, it might be so valuable for other authors.
I think, as much as I'd like to say it was the idea, and I think it was partly, but when I look back, some of the ideas that I abandoned, they are good, and I will rework them at some point. Some of them are terrible and will never see the light of day ever again, but some had potential. But I think I just needed to get out of my own way. And I think I was sitting down each day with this huge pressure of like, I want to write something that really excites me, and I couldn't do it. And the good thing about Her Many Faces is because there are so many characters talking and they're short chapters, I could kind of do that anywhere. So I would just be, in a queue in a shop, and I would write a quick chapter on my phone that was John speaking, or I would, the bottom of another document that I was working on for my day job, just a quick scene from Max's perspective. And before I knew it, I'd kind of worked up this store of scenes that were starting to come together. And it was almost as if my brain had I'd snuck it past the part of my brain that was saying, you can't do this, stop this. I'd just managed to sneak past, and then I was in, and it was time to go.
I love the idea that you're tricking your own brain into letting you succeed. There is a lesson there some way. And it may be also that I think what you said, something about the pressure of sitting at your desk thinking, I have to make this good.
Yeah.
And that, you're doomed if you do that. You just have to, it's easier for me to say than do. You just sort of have to let it be. And also, my final question, and then we want questions from all of you because I see them stacking up here, and I want to make sure we get to many of those. Your biography says that you learned things as a cocktail waitress, as Katie is in the book. What did you learn as a cocktail waitress, and did you know at the time you were learning it, or did you draw on that as you were writing this, or both?
I think probably not while I was doing it. I think while I was doing it, it seemed like a very stressful, hard job. But not that I worked in anywhere nearly as nice as where Katie works. I worked in much scummier bars. But I think I learned how invisible you are as a waitress. But you're also quite powerful. I mean, these men get poisoned in this club, and she's on trial for it. She had the power. She was bringing them the drinks, and she's overhearing a lot. We learn from her at the beginning and at the end that she's in these private dining rooms with these very powerful men, so, one of whom is a politician, and they're talking about things that they would never speak about to her anywhere else. But because she's in her waitress uniform, she doesn't exist to them. She can move around and do whatever she wants. And that definitely happened to me. The things you overhear in any service role, I guess, but particularly as a waitress, they're surprising.
So invisibility has its powers, certainly.
It does have its power, yeah. And it gets into trouble in this case, but
well, we get drawn into that just instantly when we're in the head of Katie and hear her listening to what these people are saying, and they're just vile and greedy and immoral, and they don't care that she's hearing, but she is hearing. It's a terrific murder mystery. No spoilers, of course, on Crime Time. And my final question to you, and then we'll get to questions from the audience. Did you know the ending?
I knew whether she was guilty or not.
Oh.
And the one thing that did change was the kind of logistics of the trial. So I had it ending one way with a certain piece of evidence. And when I was maybe 2 or 3 drafts in, and I paid a barrister to read it, because like the English court system is really, really complicated, and there's so many archaic rules, and I wanted to make sure that I was getting it right. That, no matter how much research you do, I feel like you're going to miss something. So she was incredibly helpful. This lawyer but she told me the trial wouldn't end like that. It's not possible. There are actually surprisingly few mechanisms to end a trial in the UK once it's started. And she told me like various things that I could do with the problem that I had. I don't want to spoil anything, but she was really helpful, and she gave me a couple of options.
That was thin ice that you were skating on. Very good job. Very good job, because you will never, 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 I mean, don't even worry about the outcome of this. Enjoy the ride, you all, on this story, and just let this story wash over you. And it will, I promise you, keep you captivated, but it will also change the way you look at the world, and you look at yourself, and you look at the people who you love, and you look at the people who are involved in your life. It is a life-changing book and a real triumph. Nicci, thank you for being here today. Let's hear it from the audience. Sherry says, is this an audiobook? And if so, is it with multiple narrators?
Yes, it is. It is. So I got sent an email that had a few different options for each of the men and for Katie herself. And it was a really challenge. Like, I mean, that's always an interesting thing anyway, like hearing possible audiobook narrators. But what was interesting is I was trying to think partly who sounds the most like each character in my head, but also do they sound too similar? Because I don't want, a listener to be muddling them up. So trying to find ones who sounded right and were different enough was the challenge. But I think they did a really good job.
And not obviously different, like someone who has an Italian accent.
No.
Yeah. I mean, so it has to be subtly different, but enough. So this will be really fun to listen to. It'll be very intriguing and suspenseful to hear it. It's a beautiful story to hear, and especially if you're in their voice.
Yeah, I haven't listened to it yet, actually. I've got a friend who's listening to it, but it's the same as reading a book once it's published. It's too scary. I don't know if you feel the same, but because you can't change it, I'd rather just not know.
I completely agree. I hear every single thing that I would have changed when it's just fine. It's fine. It's obviously fine. Getting the reviews, more than fine. Who else has a question? Are your other books mystery? Hey, Deborah. Hey, Debbie. Are your other books mystery? Says Debbie.
Yeah, they are some of them. So the first two, which thankfully are now out of print because they were terrible. I was very young when they were published, and I think fondly of them as if a child or my younger cousin perhaps had written them, but I don't feel like they're something that I would write now. And then I wrote a couple or three young adult thrillers. So they were all set in kind of schools, teenagers doing bad things to each other. And then I wrote two under a pseudonym, Phoebe Locke, one of which was kind of a supernatural mystery, and the other was more like a serial killer thriller. So they are different. They are less, I would say How Many Faces is kind of book club mystery. I don't know if you agree with that, Hank. And the others were kind of more straight crime, I would say.
Book club mystery is a perfect description of it, because everyone will have an opinion on what happened. Everyone will have an opinion about who Katie is and what she might have done, and how we as women feel, and how men feel, and how we feel about each other. A lot to talk about. If you have a book club, I highly, highly recommend Her Many Faces. Let's have time for one more question, Margaret. Do we have someone else? Are the titles, hey Renee, titles and covers different between US and UK? Can you show us the UK cover? Do you have one?
I can. If you'll let me just step away from the desk. I do have one somewhere.
Oh, here's the suspense. Renee, this is such a good question. Let's see how this.
This is the UK.
Oh, that's interesting. So similar.
Similar. It's a navy blue, and a kind of more of like a swirly face rather than the broken face. But yeah,
swirly face, broken face. Both of them have many faces. I hope you're all. Let me just ask you finally, Nicci. You conquered this demon in writing the book. It's hard enough to write a book, but it's way more orders of magnitude difficult to write a book if you're not feeling certain about yourself as a person. How do you feel now, sort of coming out of this with wild success?
Scared. No, I think I'm enjoying writing the new thing, which is nice. I worried that the same thing would happen again, and I'd get in my own way and start like getting to that 20,000-30,000 word mark and thinking, no, something else would be better. But I didn't. I found this story that I'm working on now, I feel excited to get to know the characters. It's nowhere near ready for anybody else to see yet, but I am really enjoying the process with this one.
Congratulations in every way. That is just a wonderful thing. I know that when I get to 36,000 words,
Okay.
that's my moment when I think, okay, this is going to work. I'm so happy when I get 36,001. It's just a turning point. So we all have our moments.
Okay.
You have such a wonderful story, Nicci, both as an author and also you are a wonderful storyteller. So thank you for this. It's been a treat. Let's spin the wheel of fun.
Exciting.
And see who wins here. Oh, look how many people we have. This is great. And we will. I always want to hum during this and see. Trisha Blanchett. Oh, Trisha is a wonderful author in her own right, and we are so a big fan of A Mighty Blaze. So this is perfect. And Trisha, you will absolutely love this book, Her Many Faces by Nicci Cloke, and we will get this book right to you. Not this one. I'm keeping this copy because I love this so much, but Trisha will get your own copy. Quickly before we go, and then I'll give you the last word. Next week at 4 p.m. ET, we'll have Clémence Michelon, whose new book, Our Last Resort, a wonderful multi-layered title about two people who have escaped from a cult, one of whom is now charged with murder. Our Last Resort. And look at that cover. It's seductive, and it is secluded, and it is incredibly sinister. So Clémence will be here next Tuesday at 4 p.m. ET.
I'm dying to read that one.
I'll send you my copy. Thank you. Happy Pub Day.
Thank you.
And just to wrap up, how are you feeling now and today, and about your future and about your choice to be an author?
Good. I'm feeling, it's, that feeling when people on Instagram are wishing you a happy publication day, and suddenly this thing that was in your head is out there in the world, and I can, even though it's book 8, technically, I can never actually believe it, that this thing that I made up is out there and people are reading it. And I hope I never lose that sense of wonder about it. I really hope that will always be there.
I do too, and I wish that for you as well. Quickly, tell our group here where you are on Instagram so we can follow you.
I'm just at Nicci Cloke on Instagram. My website is niccicloke.com.
So go run, find Nicci Cloke on Instagram. Oops, this is Clémence's book.
Okay, you can hold that one up.
Run, click to get Her Many Faces. If you are not Trisha Blanchett, you do not win that today. So you can win it for yourself by going to wherever you buy your books or to the library, and make sure you grab a copy of this. Everyone will be talking about it. Remember, we will see you next week right here at 4 p.m. ET on Crime Time. Nicci, congratulations.
Thank you.
And
thank you everyone for the lovely questions. This was really fun.
It's a good audience, isn't it?
Great audience.
Totally agree. And we rely on that. We rely on you, all of you, to be here on Crime Time every Tuesday at 4 p.m. ET. And remember, as I always say, it is always safe inside a book.